then let me use his example about hecklers. Yeah, so hecklers are tough. So the way I deal with hecklers, and it was maybe a year or two in my career, I was at the punchline, and I had a horrible heckler. And you do a callback, right? So I've seen you do lava shoes on the thing. I like lava shoes. So obviously you do lava shoes as a callback to do your thing. So a callback is really, really good. And trust me, a callback in a speech is excellent. You have that joke at the front, and then you sort of come back and give it to them at the end, or even later in the show. Callbacks work great for improv, they work great for stand-up, and they work great for regular speeches. But so I do a joke where I basically talk about, I opened for a guy named Josh Blue. Josh Blue won Last Comic Standing 2008. He's got a really severe touring schedule, but he's also got cerebral palsy. And it's a great illustration because the last 15 minutes of his act, he actually takes questions about what it's like to have cerebral palsy. And trust me, he teaches people more about what it's like to have cerebral palsy than any serious lecture at all, right? Because he's funny about it, he's much more engaging. So, and this is actually true. I heard it from the front row for one of the shows I opened for him. I walk out, and I tell what I tell. I tell nerd jokes, right? And you can tell because I've got the pocket protector. And I tell nerd jokes, so I told my normal nerd jokes. And what did I hear from the front row? I heard, oh, look, Herb, even the MC's got cerebral palsy. I say, I'm glad you laughed at that, because, oh, my God, making fun of the handicap, we can't do that. And I remind people, Josh laughed at that. So that was perfectly fine as well. But I explained to them that it's not called cerebral palsy. It finally has a name, and I'm glad of it. It's called Asperger's syndrome. It's a mild form of autism, makes us socially inept. And I'm just glad that it finally has a name, because it's a hell of a lot better than what they called it in high school, asshole. And that gets me to, again, but before I talk about this example, knowing your audience. You guys are really tough to know. So I saw your act. Your act's basically PG, maybe PG-13, right? But I mean, you can say shit in a PG-13 movie now, right? So. But it was filmed by someone in the audience when you were at the first. People were going, oh my God, he didn't go there. He didn't say that. And see, I do a callback in my act when I mention that joke about asshole syndrome. Because later, I search the chemical abstract database. And if you put in the word asshole, you will find a pivotal study done by 4 psychologists from the University of Illinois, University of Michigan, and Northwestern University that actually bumped into people, guys in the South and the North, called them an asshole, and then interviewed them afterwards and measured their testosterone and cortisol levels. Cortisol is a fight or flight hormone. And in New York, I actually show this. They're basically flat, before and after. Actually, I think up north, for the cortisol, it actually goes down, because people in New York are used to be calling that by people in New Jersey all the time. They don't care. But in the South, it goes like this. So basically what it says, if you are ever caught in a road rage incident here in the South, particularly in Kennesaw, because I like to make fun of Kennesaw, you want to leave. You just absolutely want to leave. But I don't even remember where I was going with this sort of thing. And so let me tell you, I do things very differently. The set list is exactly that. It's 1 or 2 words that is just written down. Some people write it in a linear list. If you're doing 45 minutes to an hour, like a headliner, I'm trying to think, who's the guy? He's on Chelsea lately a lot. He writes a set list that's a big circle with spokes. I work with a guy named Bill Dwyer who used to host BattleBots. If you ever watch BattleBots, he was the crazy guy on that. His looks like a flow chart. I don't know what it looks, some kind of Venn diagram. He's got circles overlapping, this sort of thing. And the sort of rule of thumb is you better know your last joke, and you better know your first joke. And they better be funny. You are absolutely right. And that's why you'll tend to see people repeat last jokes. One of my favorite last jokes to do is I will spend an entire hour in front of American Chemical Society audiences making fun of people. And I'll say, look, I kind of feel bad that, I basically made fun of you people. And I believe it was Scott Adams is one of my favorite quotes. Somebody asked Scott Adams, who draws Dilbert, don't you feel bad when you're making fun of all these engineers? He said, no, they don't mind it either. They're grateful for the attention. So one of my closing jokes is always that I said, look, whoever I'm talking to, chemists, industrial engineers, chemical engineers, doesn't really matter because they all go together. I'll say one nice thing about being a chemist is being a chemist, quite the turn, right? Because you know what they say, once you had a chemist, you never go back to someone who doesn't wear safety glasses in the bedroom again. And of course I do a lot of jokes with safety glasses. I do a thing on Phantom of the Opera where I put safety glasses. It's called Phantom of the Polyolefin Plant. It's very musical. They love it. But then, you know, after you say that, you simply point out that, well, the safety glasses, darn good idea, especially with us old geezers walking around on Viagra and Cialis. It's only a matter of time till somebody puts an eye on it. Right? And see, that's where you're wondering, are you at the edge? And with adults who've been drinking wine and beer at the final conference banquet, that is never a problem. People just laugh their butts off at that joke. And they think it's totally reasonable. And then I always end the joke by saying, now look, myself, I never thought I had a problem with that sort of thing. Until one day I checked my email at work and realized that everyone that sells Viagra and Cialis over the internet thinks I do. Right? And then you end with something like, and have you seen this new stuff? I get emails about it all the time. This all-natural herbal Viagra, right? Like I'm going to waste my good money on that junk. Because I'll be honest with you, my wife and I, we've been using all-natural supplements to jumpstart things in the bedroom for years. We just called it tequila. And it's very funny because when I do this in front of, you know, I tell that joke in front of the Vinyl Institute. I tell that joke in front of the American Chemical Society, the American Institute of Chemical Engineers. Older people think it's fine for an old guy, even if he's a professor, to tell that joke. You people, kind of like your audience, right? And I mean, you were, like I said, PG, are horrified. But if you're a regular stand-up comic, and there was a great, you may have seen him a couple years ago, it's an Asian guy who talks about Asian stereotypes. I mean, this guy, he swears constantly throughout the whole thing. Everybody thought it was really funny. And then he took 20 minutes at the end and literally did a sort of Q&A about this whole sort of thing. So it was actually an educational thing, but for him it's okay. Obviously your friends don't think it's okay, and you kind of have to skirt the edge. And let me give you the best quote I can about the edge. Finding the edge is really hard to do. And have I gone over the edge? Maybe I have a few times. But the closer you are to the edge, I think, the better. And my favorite quote was from George Carlin. And I never met George Carlin, but I met Alonzo Bowden, the last Comic Standing 2007 winner. And he was on the set of George for one of his specials, and he basically said, I like to take people over the edge and make them glad they came along for the ride. And I guess the one lesson that people are learning in the living learning community that we have is that comedy is less about the funny and more about the honesty, right? Because you make an honest observation. And you make some funny, honest observation, and then you slowly, and I said this before, I do it when I'm in traffic. Right, so I always put my headset on for my cellular phone, even though I'm not talking on my cellular phone, because I'll be going like, and then people will think I'm just talking, so it's okay. So right now, I'm working on a joke about words. I like to talk about words. George Carlin's my favorite comedian. He liked to talk about words, right? He used to talk about things like deplane. It's time to deplane. Deplane, we're already on deplane, and things like that. You know, and I'll be honest with you, when I talk to college students, my favorite word is one that my 15-year-old high school daughter taught me, taint. I got a whole 5 minutes on that, because we didn't need taint. We got it done old school. We didn't need words like taint. It was, okay, I'm not going to go into that now. This is the public speaking club. But, and I don't even remember where I was going. And that, I guess, is the whole thing. When you got to talk, you know exactly what you're doing. But when you've got a set, you got the set list, you know, the first joke, you know, the last joke, but the crazy guy in the middle may go nuts on you. And like I said, the way I have a standard way of dealing with hecklers. I always tell a joke near the beginning. After I tell that Josh Blue joke, I said, well, wherever I go, I always bring, you know, the plastic vinyl pocket protector. And I like the plastic vinyl pocket protector. And I tell my students it's a great idea. Not only does it keep you from getting that big stain on your shirt, in a pinch, it'll double as a condom. Yeah, see, there's hesitation there. And there are dirtier ways you can go with that joke, but I always say, I know what you're thinking. What does a Georgia Tech male undergraduate engineering student need with a condom? Perhaps that's why we use the engineer's preferred mode of birth control, our personalities. And I always point out that I love this, the plastic vinyl pocket protector in front of a technical audience, because I say mine always comes completely equipped with the laser pointer, because nothing says back off to a would-be heckler like a 5 milliwatt laser right in the eye. And when you open for someone, they're always asking, Pete, were there hecklers out there? How can I tell where the hecklers are? I'm like, it's easy, dude. Look for the guy going like this. Ah!